Ivan IV of Russia, historically known as Ivan the Terrible, was born on August 25, 1530, at the Muscovite royal estate of Kolomenskoye, located a few kilometers from Moscow. He was the son of Vasily III, the Grand Prince of Muscovy, who had ruled since 1505, and Elena Glinskaya, a young noblewoman of mixed Serbian and Slavic descent. Elena married Vasily III in 1526, after he divorced his first wife, Solomonia, due to the lack of an heir. Despite concerns about Elena's Roman Catholic upbringing, unusual in a predominantly Eastern Orthodox Russia, her union with Vasily III soon produced two sons, Ivan and Yuri, the latter being deaf and sidelined politically. Ivan was the favored successor. His life unfolded amidst significant geopolitical shifts in Eastern Europe during the late 15th and early 16th centuries. The term Rus had medieval origins, linked to the Vikings, who navigated Eastern Europe's great rivers, creating city-states like Kiev and Novgorod, which were strong regional powers until the Mongol invasions in the 13th century fragmented the region into various khanates. Muscovy was initially a small duchy, but expanded under Ivan III, Ivan IV's grandfather, who began consolidating power, subduing rival Russian states, and pushing the frontiers south along the Volga River. Vasily III continued this expansion throughout the 1530s and 1540s. Ivan IV ascended to power at a young age after his father's death in 1533, with his mother acting as regent until her mysterious death in 1538, believed to be due to poisoning amid court intrigues. Subsequently, the powerful Shuisky faction manipulated the regency until Ivan took full control in 1547 at age 16 when he was crowned Grand Prince and later assumed the title of Tsar, symbolizing imperial authority rooted in Roman tradition. Ivan's early rule was marked by efforts to modernize Muscovy, including legal reforms like the Sudebnik of 1550, which strengthened state institutions and local governance, and church reforms in 1551 aimed at addressing issues similar to those faced by Western European Christianity during the Reformation. Under his reign, Moscow transformed architecturally and politically, exemplified by the construction of St. Basil's Cathedral to commemorate military victories. His rule also saw the establishment of diplomatic and trade ties with England via the Muscovy Company, ending Russia's previous isolation and bringing Renaissance ideas and printing technology to Moscow. Militarily, Ivan expanded Russian territory significantly, conquering the Kazan Khanate and Astrakhan, extending control to the Caspian Sea, and engaging in wars against the Nogai Horde, the Crimean Tatars, and the Ottoman Empire, marking Russia's emergence as a significant power. However, his reign was also marred by devastating fires in Moscow, notably in 1547 and 1571, the latter caused by a Tatar invasion that razed large parts of the city. Ivan's personal life deeply influenced his rule. His first wife, Anastasia Romanovna, whom he married in 1547, was a stabilizing presence, but her death in 1560 precipitated a shift towards tyranny and paranoia. Subsequent marriages were troubled, and his mental state deteriorated, leading to the creation of the Oprichnina, a secret police force that enforced brutal repression, including mass executions and confiscations, contributing to widespread fear. One of the most infamous episodes was the massacre of Novgorod in 1571. Ivan's paranoia culminated tragically in 1581 when he allegedly killed his own son in a fit of rage, an event immortalized in Russian art. Towards the end of his reign, Ivan pursued westward expansion, engaging in the Livonian War to gain access to the Baltic Sea, but faced setbacks against a strengthened Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and Sweden. He died in 1584, likely from a stroke or related neurological disorder, at age 53. His death led to a period of political instability known as the Time of Troubles, lasting until the Romanov dynasty's establishment in 1613. Ivan IV's legacy is complex. He was a transformative figure who laid the foundations of the Russian Empire through territorial expansion and state reform. Yet his reign also introduced severe autocracy and violence that shaped Russian governance for centuries. His moniker, the Terrible, reflects only part of his multifaceted rule, which continues to provoke debate about his historical role and impact. Expanding further, Ivan IV's upbringing was marked by hardship and trauma, which scholars speculate influenced his later volatile behavior. After his mother's death, he was left vulnerable to the machinations of boyar factions vying for control, enduring neglect and abuse. His early exposure to court intrigues ingrained a lifelong distrust of the nobility, leading to his later harsh policies aimed at curbing their power. The cultural and religious climate of Muscovy at the time was also highly significant. The Orthodox Church held tremendous influence, yet Ivan sought to assert state supremacy over church affairs, reflecting a broader European trend of centralizing authority. His church reforms in 1551, codified in the Stoglov Council, attempted to standardize religious practices and discipline clergy, anticipating efforts at modernization and control seen in other contemporary monarchies. Economically, Ivan's reign saw the growth of trade routes and the beginnings of proto-industrial activities, such as mining and metalworking, which contributed to the state's wealth and military capabilities. The Muscovy Company's establishment in 1555 opened northern trade with England, enhancing diplomatic relations and importing technological innovations, including printing presses, which helped disseminate knowledge and religious texts. Architecturally, beyond St. Basil's Cathedral, Ivan commissioned numerous churches and fortifications, transforming Moscow into a visually imposing capital, reflecting his imperial ambitions. His military campaigns against the Khanates of Kazan and Astrakhan not only expanded territory but also secured access to vital trade routes along the Volga River, integrating diverse peoples into the Muscovite state. These conquests, while military successes, also involved brutal tactics and the suppression of local populations, sowing seeds of ethnic tensions that would persist. The Livonian War, 1558–1583, though ultimately unsuccessful, demonstrated Ivan's aspiration to transform Russia into a European power with maritime access, a goal that would shape Russian foreign policy for centuries. Politically, the Oprichnina period, 1565–1572, was characterized by Ivan's direct rule over a separate territory, enforced by the Oprichniki, whose terror tactics eliminated perceived enemies but devastated the economy and nobility's power base. The massacre of Novgorod in 1570 exemplified the extreme measures taken to suppress dissent, resulting in thousands of deaths and long-term damage to one of Russia's most important cities. Ivan's psychological state during this era, perhaps exacerbated by illness and personal loss, contributed to increasingly erratic and brutal governance. His later years were marked by continued internal strife, failed military ventures, and a decline in central authority. Following his death, the succession crisis and lack of a strong heir plunged Russia into the time of troubles, a period of famine, civil war, and foreign intervention, underscoring the fragile foundations left by Ivan's policies. Despite these challenges, Ivan IV's reign fundamentally transformed Muscovy from a fragmented collection of principalities into a centralized autocratic state, setting the stage for the rise of the Russian Empire. His legacy remains subject to ongoing historical reassessment, balancing his achievements in state building and territorial expansion against the human cost of his authoritarian rule and the enduring scars it left on Russian society and governance. Moreover, to fully appreciate the magnitude of Ivan IV's impact, one must delve deeper into the nuanced aspects of his personality, governance style, and the socio-political context in which he ruled. Ivan was known to possess a complex character, marked by both intellectual curiosity and profound emotional instability, traits possibly exacerbated by the traumatic losses and betrayals he experienced during his youth. His reign coincided with significant shifts in the European political landscape, including the Reformation and the rise of centralized nation-states, which influenced his ambitions to elevate Muscovy's standing among the powers of Europe. Ivan's legal reforms, such as the Sudebnik of 1550, not only streamlined the judicial system, but also reflected his desire to diminish the influence of the boyar aristocracy, which he viewed as a threat to his authority. This legal codification helped lay the groundwork for more systematic governance, emphasizing the rule of law under the Tsar's absolute control, a departure from the more decentralized feudal practices of earlier periods. His church reforms, while aiming to unify religious practice, also served to assert state control over the clergy, intertwining religious authority with the autocratic governance model he championed. Economically, the establishment of the Muscovy Company and the opening of trade routes to England and beyond facilitated an influx of foreign goods, ideas, and technologies, which contributed to the gradual modernization of the Russian economy and society. The introduction of printing technology under his patronage was particularly significant, as it allowed for wider dissemination of religious texts and secular knowledge, fostering a cultural renaissance within Russia's elite circles. Architecturally, Ivan's ambitious building projects, including not only St. Basil's Cathedral, but also the fortification of Moscow's Kremlin and the construction of numerous churches across his realm, symbolized his vision of Muscovy as a burgeoning empire with a distinct identity and divine sanction. Militarily, Ivan's campaigns against the Kazan and Astrakhan Khanates were pivotal in securing control over the Volga River, a crucial artery for trade and military movement, thus integrating diverse ethnic groups into the Muscovite state and expanding its influence into the Eurasian steppe. These conquests, while celebrated as triumphs, also involved harsh measures against local populations, including forced conversions, deportations, and executions, which sowed long-lasting ethnic and religious tensions. The Livonian War, despite its failure to secure Baltic access, underscored Ivan's strategic vision of positioning Russia as a naval and commercial power, ambitions that would influence subsequent Russian rulers. The Oprichnina period remains one of the most controversial aspects of Ivan's reign. This state within a state was marked by brutal purges, confiscations of noble lands, and widespread terror that destabilized the Russian nobility and economy, but also reinforced the Tsar's unchallenged authority. The massacre of Novgorod in 1570, where tens of thousands were killed or exiled, stands as a grim testament to the extremes of Ivan's paranoia and the lengths he would go to suppress dissent and consolidate power. Ivan's psychological decline, exacerbated by personal tragedies such as the death of his beloved wife Anastasia and the estrangement from his surviving son Dmitry, culminated in acts of violence within his own family, further darkening his legacy. His death in 1584 and the ensuing time of troubles exposed the vulnerabilities of the autocratic system he had built, as the absence of a clear succession plan led to decades of chaos and foreign intervention. Nevertheless, Ivan IV's reign indelibly shaped Russian history, transforming Muscovy into a centralized state with imperial ambitions and a legacy that continues to be reassessed by historians, reflecting the enduring tension between his achievements and the brutal methods he employed to realize them. In further examining Ivan IV's life, it is crucial to consider the intricate interplay of political, cultural, and psychological factors which influenced his governance and legacy. The early death of his father and his mother's subsequent demise left Ivan vulnerable to the volatile ambitions of rival boyar families, notably the Shuiskys, whose manipulations and rivalries created an environment of betrayal and insecurity. This environment arguably contributed to Ivan's deep-seated mistrust of the nobility, informing his later strategies to centralize power and diminish aristocratic influence. His establishment of the Oprichnina, a policy of political repression and territorial division, was not merely an expression of cruelty, but also a calculated attempt to break the power of the boyars and consolidate autocratic rule. This institution wielded sweeping powers, including the right to confiscate land, execute perceived enemies, and enforce loyalty through terror, fundamentally altering the structure of Muscovite governance. The Oprichniki, Ivan's personal enforcers, operated with impunity, their brutal tactics instilling fear throughout the realm and leaving a legacy of trauma that would resonate for generations. Culturally, Ivan's reign coincided with a period of religious ferment and artistic flourishing. His patronage of the Orthodox Church and the commissioning of iconic architectural works like St. John's St. Basil's Cathedral symbolized both religious devotion and political power, intertwining faith with the image of the Tsar as God's appointed ruler. At the same time, his church reforms sought to purify religious practice and strengthen ecclesiastical discipline, aligning Muscovy with broader European trends of religious consolidation amid the Reformation's challenges. Economically, Ivan's policies fostered increased engagement with Western Europe, as evidenced by the Muscovy Company's establishment, which opened trade routes and facilitated cultural and technological exchanges. This period saw the introduction of printing presses, the spread of Renaissance humanism, and the gradual modernization of Russia's administrative and military structures. Militarily, Ivan's campaigns were marked by both strategic brilliance and ruthless efficiency. The conquest of Kazan and Astrakhan secured critical waterways and trade routes, enabling Russia to emerge as a dominant power in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. However, these victories came at a high human cost, with widespread destruction, forced conversions, and demographic upheavals among the conquered populations. The Livonian War, though ultimately unsuccessful, reflected Ivan's vision of Russia as a maritime power, aspiring to access the Baltic Sea and integrate into European political and economic systems. His failures in this conflict highlighted the limits of his military ambitions and foreshadowed the challenges Russia would face in expanding its influence westward. The psychological dimensions of Ivan's reign are equally significant. His personal losses, including the death of Anastasia Romanovna and the estrangement from his son Dmitry, coupled with possible mental health issues exacerbated by physical illness, contributed to episodes of extreme violence and paranoia. These personal struggles manifested in policies and actions that destabilized the state and alienated key segments of society. The infamous incident in which Ivan reportedly killed his own son remains emblematic of the tragic intersection of personal torment and political power. In sum, Ivan's reign was a transformative and tumultuous era that reshaped Russia's trajectory. His efforts to centralize authority, expand territory, and modernize state institutions laid the groundwork for the Russian Empire, while his autocratic methods and repressive policies left enduring scars. The historical debate surrounding his legacy continues to explore the duality of his rule as both visionary leader and tyrant, reflecting the complexities of governance, personality, and historical context in early modern Russia. Despite the controversies that envelop Ivan IV's legacy, his reign undeniably marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of Russian statehood. By consolidating power through the establishment of the Oprichnina, Ivan introduced a new, albeit brutal, mechanism of centralized control that challenged the traditional power of the boyar aristocracy and redefined the relationship between the ruler and his subjects. This shift not only reinforced the Tsar's autocratic authority, but also set a precedent for future Russian rulers, who would continue to navigate the delicate balance between reform and repression. Furthermore, Ivan's patronage of the arts and architecture, exemplified by the construction of iconic structures such as St. Basil's Cathedral, contributed to the cultural identity and symbolic representation of Moscow as the Third Rome, a successor to the legacy of Byzantium. Internationally, Ivan's reign signaled Russia's emergence from relative isolation into the complex web of European politics, diplomacy, and conflict. His interactions with neighboring states and diplomatic missions paved the way for Russia's gradual integration into the broader geopolitical landscape, even as his aggressive expansionism and internal policies sowed seeds of future instability. Ultimately, Ivan IV's reign embodies the paradoxes of autocratic power, the capacity to forge a unified, expansive state, alongside the propensity for tyranny and devastation. These contradictions continue to captivate historians and shape popular perceptions of Russia's formative centuries, underscoring the enduring impact of Ivan the Terrible's complex and often contradictory legacy. The enduring fascination with Ivan IV also lies in the personal dimension of his rule, where his psychological complexities and volatile temperament have been scrutinized to better understand the motivations behind his often ruthless decisions. Historians have debated whether Ivan's paranoia and bouts of mental instability were intrinsic traits or the result of the immense pressures and traumas he faced from a young age, including the violent death of his parents and betrayals within the court. This humanization of a figure frequently depicted as a monstrous tyrant invites a nuanced interpretation that considers the interplay between individual psychology and the broader socio-political forces at work. Moreover, the narratives surrounding Ivan's reign have been shaped and reshaped by subsequent generations, reflecting changing political ideologies and cultural attitudes toward authority, governance, and national identity. In Russian literature, folklore, and popular culture, Ivan the Terrible is simultaneously vilified and mythologized, embodying the archetype of the tragic ruler whose ambition and flaws left an indelible mark on the nation's history. As modern scholarship continues to unearth new archival evidence and employ interdisciplinary approaches, the study of Ivan IV remains a dynamic field, revealing as much about the past as it does about the evolving perspectives of those who seek to interpret it. Ultimately, the legacy of Ivan the Terrible serves as a powerful reminder of the complexities inherent in leadership, and the enduring consequences of power wielded without restraint. In examining Ivan IV's impact on Russia, it is essential to consider how his reign set precedents that influenced the trajectory of Russian autocracy for centuries. His establishment of a centralized state apparatus, the creation of a standing army, and the subjugation of the nobility through the Oprichnina not only consolidated power in the hands of the Tsar, but also institutionalized mechanisms of control and repression that would be emulated by his successors. This legacy contributed to a political culture where absolute authority was often maintained through fear and coercion, shaping the relationship between ruler and ruled in ways that persisted well into the modern era. Furthermore, Ivan's expansionist policies laid the groundwork for Russia's emergence as a multi-ethnic empire, integrating diverse peoples and territories under a single sovereign. These developments highlight how Ivan IV's reign was pivotal not only in the immediate context of 16th century Russia, but also in the broader historical evolution of the Russian state, influencing its governance, social structures, and imperial ambitions for generations to come. The study of Ivan the Terrible thus offers invaluable insights into the origins of Russian autocracy and the enduring patterns of power and resistance that have defined its history. Ivan's reign also had profound cultural and societal repercussions that extended beyond politics and territorial expansion. The profound fear and instability generated by his purges and the oppressive atmosphere of the Oprichnina deeply affected Russian society, fostering a climate where suspicion and distrust permeated everyday life. This period witnessed a contraction of the traditional nobility's influence, which disrupted established social hierarchies and created a power vacuum that was gradually filled by a more centralized bureaucracy loyal to the Tsar. Moreover, Ivan's complex relationship with the Russian Orthodox Church, which he both supported and sought to control, underscored the intertwined nature of religion and state authority in shaping Russian identity. The Tsar's patronage of religious art and architecture, alongside his brutal suppression of dissenters, encapsulated the paradox of his legacy, a ruler who was simultaneously a devout Christian and a ruthless despot. These cultural dynamics contributed to the formation of a distinctly Russian ethos, characterized by a deep reverence for autocratic power, tempered by an undercurrent of fear and resilience. As historians continue to unravel the multifaceted dimensions of Ivan the Terrible's rule, it becomes clear that his impact resonates far beyond his lifetime, echoing through the annals of Russian history as a testament to the enduring complexities of governance, faith, and identity. Ivan IV's legacy also serves as a critical lens through which to examine the broader theme of state building in early modern Europe, revealing the tensions between centralization and fragmentation that many emerging states faced. His efforts to consolidate power and extend territorial control mirror similar processes in contemporaneous monarchies, yet the uniquely harsh methods he employed left an indelible mark on the Russian psyche and institutional framework. The creation of the Oprichnina, in particular, stands out as an early example of state-sponsored terror used to enforce loyalty and suppress opposition, a tactic that would later be echoed in various forms throughout Russian history. Furthermore, Ivan's reign demonstrated the challenges inherent in balancing autocratic ambition with effective governance, as the brutality that secured his authority also sowed seeds of instability and distrust. This paradox of power, where the mechanisms of control simultaneously sustain and undermine the ruler's position, offers a powerful illustration of the complexities that define not only Ivan IV's era, but also the broader trajectory of Russian political development. As such, the study of Ivan the Terrible remains essential for understanding not just the historical specifics of his reign, but also the enduring patterns of authority, resistance, and identity that continue to shape Russia today. Moreover, Ivan IV's reign invites reflection on the interplay between personal psychology and political behavior in historical leadership. His apparent bouts of paranoia, violent outbursts, and extreme measures suggest a ruler deeply affected by both internal insecurities and external pressures. This psychological dimension adds a humanizing yet tragic layer to his persona, illustrating how individual temperament can influence the course of a nation's history. The cultural legacy of Ivan the Terrible, evident in literature, folklore, and national memory, underscores the lasting fascination and ambivalence toward his figure. Whether viewed as a symbol of strong centralized authority necessary for Russia's emergence as a major power, or as a cautionary example of autocracy's excesses, Ivan IV's complex character and reign continue to provoke debate and analysis. In this way, Ivan the Terrible remains a pivotal figure, not only for historians, but also for anyone seeking to comprehend the intricate relationship between power, identity, and the human condition in the shaping of historical destinies. Ivan the Terrible's impact extends beyond political and psychological realms, influencing Russian art and culture in profound ways. His reign coincided with significant developments in architecture, such as the construction of St. Basil's Cathedral, which stands as a vibrant symbol of Russia's unique cultural identity. The tensions within Ivan's rule, between creation and destruction, order and chaos, are mirrored in the rich artistic expressions of the period. Furthermore, his legacy continues to resonate in modern Russia, where debates about strong leadership and national identity often invoke his controversial example. This enduring engagement with Ivan IV's life and reign highlights the multifaceted nature of historical memory and its role in shaping contemporary narratives.